3 a.m. Cottonwood Heights, Utah. Everything is quiet, the kind of quiet that only exists in the dead hours between midnight and sunrise, when the rest of the world is asleep, and the only sound you can hear is the hum of the neighborhood and the soft crunch of gravel under someone's feet. A gate begins to open. Headlights cut through the darkness as a car eases toward the exit of a massive private estate. And then, a figure lunges from the bushes straight into the path of the vehicle. The driver swerves tires, screaming on asphalt, and barely avoids a collision. The figure doesn't flinch, doesn't run, just stands there in the dark, arms out, staring, waiting. The man in the back seat of that car, one of the most recognizable artists on the planet, the woman standing in front of it, she'd already been there 11 times before, and she had no intention of stopping. Let me set the scene. On one side of this story, you've got Post Malone Austin, Richard Post, one of the biggest music artists walking the face of this earth, the man behind Sunflower. White Iverson, rock star, a guy who sold out stadiums, made a surprise appearance at a Salt Lake City concert just months before all this went down, and lives in a sprawling, gated estate in Cottonwood Heights, Utah, a quiet suburb nestled right at the base of the Wasatch Mountains. Wealthy, secured, private, or at least that's what the gate was supposed to guarantee. On the other side of this story is Cherish Christine Gomer, 31 years old, homeless according to court documents, and described by law enforcement as difficult to find. Living somewhere in Salt Lake City, not far from Post's estate in terms of geography, but an entire world away in every other sense. She wasn't a bad person. Let me be clear about that. She was a deeply troubled one. And what happened next is one of the most heartbreaking and jaw-dropping true crime stories I've covered on this channel. Drop a comment right now and tell me, where are you watching from and what time is it there? I want to know who's up with me on this one. Seriously, drop it in the comments. I read them all. It starts as so many wild stories do, with a moment nobody saw coming. Sometime in early 2025, Cherish has an experience. We don't know exactly where she was or what she was doing. What we do know is what she believed happened. A spirit animal came to her, saw her, and it spoke. According to the Cottonwood Heights police chief, Cherish genuinely believed with absolute certainty that this spirit animal was delivering her a message from the universe. She had a predestined romantic and spiritual connection with Post Malone, not a crush, not admiration, a calling, a cosmic assignment. Now, I want you to pause here for a second. Before we go any further, this is not a woman who was scheming or calculating. This is someone who appears to have been experiencing serious, untreated mental health issues. Her belief was real to her, the connection was real to her, the mission was real to her, and that's exactly what makes what follows so compelling and so deeply, deeply troubling. Because once Cherish had her mission, nothing was going to stop her. And here's the thing about being called to find a world-famous celebrity. You can't just text him. So Cherish does the only thing she can think of. She tracks down Post Malone's home address. We don't know exactly how. We just know that she did. And she makes her way out to Cottonwood Heights. Now, Post Malone isn't naive. The man has a massive security gate out front, the kind of setup designed specifically to keep uninvited guests, fans, strangers, anyone from just walking up to his front door. Cherish sees the gate, and she waits, she watches, she's patient. And when a worker eventually leaves the property and that gate swings open, she slides right through before it closes behind them. Staff on the property notice her almost immediately. One of them walks up and makes it plain. "You need to get out of here. Now." Cherish says no. She doesn't argue. She doesn't panic. She just keeps walking further up the driveway, closer to the main house, and then she sits down on a bench out front, like she belongs there, like she's just waiting for someone to invite her inside. Police are called, they show up. And on January 21st, 2025, Cherish Christine Gomer is arrested for criminal trespassing. It's a misdemeanor. She's out fast, and she is already thinking about what comes next. A short while after that first arrest, Cherish makes a pit stop on her journey. In Midvale, Utah, a few miles from Salt Lake City, there is a Raising Cane's chicken restaurant. But not just any Raising Cane's. This one is Post Malone themed, painted pink, decorated with his memorabilia, a shrine almost to the man she was trying to reach. Maybe she thought going there would bring her closer to him. Maybe she thought he'd actually be there. We don't know. What we do know is that Cherish showed up drunk. She'd had a lot to drink before she walked through those doors, and once inside she started causing a disturbance in the dining area. The kind of scene that gets a manager involved. Manager comes over, tells her she needs to leave. She says no. Police are called. She's arrested for public intoxication, another misdemeanor. She pleads no contest. And once again, she's back on the street in no time. If the arrests were supposed to be a deterrent, they weren't working. If you've been riding with this channel for a minute, you already know these stories never go where you think they will. Hit that subscribe button right now, because what comes next in this story is something I genuinely couldn't believe when I first heard it. I need you to really hear this next part. Because of everything in this story, and there is a lot, this is the moment that stopped me cold. A few days after her February arrest, Cherish decides she's going back to Post Malone's house. No car, no shoes, barefoot. From Salt Lake City to Cottonwood Heights, that walk, if you mapped it right now, is close to 5 hours on foot. 5 hours of sidewalks and roads in Utah terrain, in the cold, without shoes. And she does it. She walks the whole way. When she arrives, she gets onto the property again. Someone spots her again. Police are called again. And here's where it gets almost surreal. The officer who responds, the same one from before, the one who read her the Bible verse, the one who made the deal. He cannot believe what he's looking at. We talked about this last week. Well, you promised me you weren't going to come back. I read you a Bible verse. You gave me your word. Cherish tells him she doesn't remember the promise. The officer, and I love this, starts giving her a hard time about her spirit animal. Tells her it's a crappy spirit because every time it calls her somewhere, she ends up in handcuffs. Tells her, straight-faced, that her spirit is leading her in circles. Cherish is arrested again, and days later, she's out. I need you to pause for a second, because this isn't just a wild story. There's something genuinely heartbreaking underneath all of it. Share this video because awareness around mental health and stalking matters. And then come right back, because this story is about to take one final, terrifying turn. By this point, Post Malone has had enough. When he does everything you're supposed to do, he goes to court. He gets a protective order. It's later upgraded to a permanent criminal stalking injunction, the legal equivalent of, you are never allowed near this person, period. Cherish ignores it. She comes back. And back, and back again. Post's own father, Rich Post, speaks to the media and confirms what law enforcement already knew. Cherish had shown up at his son's home at least a dozen times. Law enforcement writes it plainly in their own court documents. She continues to stalk her victim and is always released from jail. She does not care about the consequences of her offenses and will continue to cause significant emotional distress to her victim. Read that again. Always released from jail. That's the system speaking about itself. Officers doing their job, writing it down, was watching her walk out the door every single time, because trespassing and stalking misdemeanors in the absence of physical violence rarely result in meaningful detention. 5 arrests total between January and August of 2025, 12 visits that his family confirmed, and with every release, with every walk back to the gate, the situation wasn't getting better. It was escalating. August 4th, 2025, 3 a.m. Cottonwood Heights is asleep. The neighborhood is quiet. The only movement anywhere near Post Malone's estate is the slow creak of the gate beginning to open as his car pulls toward the exit. Somewhere in the darkness just outside that gate, in the bushes, Cherish Christine Gomer has been waiting. She's been out there for a while, patient, certain, waiting for exactly this moment. The car rolls forward. The headlights sweep the driveway, and Cherish jumps out, straight into the path of the vehicle. Post Malone's driver swerves, hard, tires screaming on pavement. The car lurches sideways and barely misses her. A split second in either direction, and this story becomes something much, much darker. Police arrive within minutes. They find Cherish just down the street. Arrest number 5. But this time, the charges aren't misdemeanors. This time, it's felony stalking in violation of a permanent criminal stalking injunction. Both third-degree felonies under Utah law. This time, she is held without bail. The Cottonwood Heights police chief steps in front of cameras and says what everyone who'd been watching this case already knew. She truly believes she has a calling from some sort of spirit animal. And she thinks she has a relationship with Mr. Post. And so she's entitled to do this, which is incredibly alarming. The law enforcement officer who wrote the booking affidavit added something else that deserves to be heard. The victim is a celebrity and already deals with a significant amount of people following him and showing up at his residence, never allowing for privacy. Even the people whose job it is to protect him couldn't fully protect him. Here's something this case brought to the surface that doesn't get talked about enough. Stalking victims aren't always women. According to the Stalking Prevention, Awareness, and Resource Center, about 1 in 6 men in the United States have experienced stalking, and those cases are dramatically underreported. Men are more likely to minimize what's happening to them. We're less likely to be taken seriously when they do report it, and less likely to be believed. Post Malone did everything right. He filed reports. He got legal protection. He cooperated with law enforcement. His family spoke publicly. And still for 8 months this kept happening. This case shows us 2 things at once. First, stalking is terrifying, and the legal system's ability to intervene meaningfully before someone gets hurt is severely limited. Second, Cherish Christine Gomer is not a monster. She is a homeless, mentally ill woman who was cycled through a system that kept handing her back the same freedom she didn't have the capacity to safely use. That's not an excuse, but it is a reality we should be talking about. As of the time this script was written, Cherish Christine Gomer is sitting in the Salt Lake County Jail and held without bail, facing multiple felony charges. She walked barefoot for 5 hours to reach someone who didn't know she existed. She broke a promise made over a Bible verse and came back anyway. She jumped in front of a moving car at 3 in the morning. And if you believe what every officer, every court document, and every interview suggests, she never stopped believing she was supposed to be there. I genuinely hope that this time she gets real help, not just a cell, mental health treatment, support, something that addresses the why behind all of this. Because locking her up and releasing her over and over clearly wasn't the answer. And this time, for her sake, and for Post Malone's, maybe something finally changes. I want to hear from you. Should Cherish face full prosecution, or should mental health treatment be the priority? Yes, drop your honest take in the comments. And if this story hit different for you, share it. It helps the channel grow, and it gets these stories in front of more people who need to hear them. New case coming soon. You don't want to miss it.